they're fast, they're nimble, they can be fierce at times.
Speed and velocity kind of your main operating principle in life as well, Brian?
I'd say I've built around 5,000 homes in central New Mexico, and that's span.
Hello, and welcome back to the Masters of Real Estate. This is Nick Shah, and today I'm very excited because we're going to learn from Brian McCarthy. Brian, how's it going, buddy?
Fantastic. Thanks so much for having me, Nick. I really appreciate this.
Yeah, likewise. I don't think we've had a guest from New Mexico before, especially Albuquerque real estate. That's something I've been fascinated with for a while. And I also don't think we've heard in as much detail from a market rate builder before. So, very excited to learn from you. But Brian, how do you introduce yourself these days?
Well, my name is Brian McCarthy. I'm one of the co-owners of Abrazo Homes in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm also the founder and CEO of Riot Technology, which is a new technology startup that's focused in prop tech and innovation for new home builders. And I'm grateful to be here.
So, Brian, you're right now running two companies. That itself is a big deal. But before we get into all that, people really want to understand how you're like. So, what spirit animal or bird best describes you?
Well, I'd have to go with the Roadrunner. The Roadrunner is our state bird from the state of New Mexico. And they're amazing. They're fast, they're nimble, they can be fierce at times if they need to be. And if you watch the old cartoons with the Roadrunner and the Coyote, everybody thinks that they're 6'6" tall, 6'6", and I'm tall. So yeah, I know I'll joke about that, but we like speed and velocity, and the Roadrunner's our state bird. So we'll go with the spirit animal for what the Roadrunner is our spirit animal.
I love Roadrunner. I've been to both the national parks in New Mexico, and I've seen a bunch. Is speed and velocity kind of your main operating principle in life as well, Brian?
I think it has to be. I mean, in the sense, we work as a home builder, we work in a pretty competitive market with a lot of publicly traded builders that have huge access to capital and huge resources, and we don't have the same exact resources. So when we look at the matrix of competitive advantage, we're not going to be able to outpurchase them in certain, materials or commodities or asset classes. So we have to be fast, we have to be nimble, and we have to be creative with how we approach our competitive landscape. So speed and culture are really two of our biggest competitive advantages, and we lean on those two items again and again to continue to propel ourselves forward.
I couldn't agree more. Speed and culture are the only means of survival for a prop tech startup in a new area. So it seems like
Absolutely.
You run a home building company, you run a prop tech startup. If you had to select a single metric that summarizes your entire professional journey so far, what would you select?
How about the number of times you get back up, right? Not the number of times you're knocked down, but the number of times you get back up. This can be a very challenging industry, and real estate in general. I mean, I got into the industry in 2001 and have been through some pretty dynamic market cycles and some big periods of volatility and change. And there's a lot of times where you get knocked down, and it's all about how many times can you get back up and dust yourself off and move forward.
I couldn't agree with you more. But if you had to summarize, how many homes you've built in your career so far or influenced the build out directly, how many would you say that is?
I'd say I've built around 5,000 homes in central New Mexico, and that's spanning across two different companies, but I think I'm over the 5,000 home mark here in terms of production building here, and they're all single family residences, all in Albuquerque, Santa Fe, Rio Rancho, and Los Lunas. So it's all this middle Rio Grande Valley portion of New Mexico. But we built in multiple cities. But yeah, I think I'm over 5,000 houses, which is fun.
Brian, 5,000 is an insanely high metric. That's 5,000 families who will celebrate holidays around their dinner table this year, thanks to the work that you and your team have done. But if you had to go all the way back to zero, when you weren't so successful and hadn't created this massive impact in central New Mexico as you've created right now, what would you say has been the broad trajectory of your life so far?
Well, it's very interesting. I think, unfortunately, I think a lot of people don't necessarily choose to get into real estate. I do think that's changing a little bit now with maybe the younger generation, but a lot of people kind of stumbled into real estate or home building or construction from one other field or another. And I would say, you just constantly have to remain curious, right? And remain as a student. We have to be perpetual students of the industry and continue to learn and adapt and change as time goes forward. Because as much, and Nick, I know you're an expert in this as well, and as much as we can proclaim today and throw down the gauntlet of all of our beliefs that we hold to be fundamental and true and perfect forever, they could all change 6 months from now. And I think we've seen that as we've gone through pandemics and economic changes and economic downturns and all these other things, is that there is no certainty, so to speak, in the world. So it's not about the industry per se. It's about developing a skill set that allows you to continually adapt and evolve in a changing industry. And I think that's true for many industries, but real estate, I think it's all amplified in real estate when we have these pretty dramatic swings. But you have to continue to propel forward and innovate and learn and stay curious along the way.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, just the construction industry, if you just look at the macroeconomics in the last 20 years, from the great financial crisis to the underbuilding in the early and mid 2000s, to now the build proclamation created by the White House recently, and housing affordability being a national agenda. Real estate has constantly changed, and if adaptability to change has been a highly critical factor. But I had a chance to look at your background. It seems like you went from studying political science in your undergrad to directly working for a home builder. So what inflection points drew you to the housing industry and the construction industry?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I think on my bio I may have left off a section there, but that was intentional. I actually I have a minor in the management of information systems, MIS, and worked for our university's IT department and pulled thousands of miles of cable all across university campus, and we were wiring up dorms and setting up servers, email accounts, and working on the IT side. And actually, I graduated from a small school in Houston, Texas in 2000. And I was actually working for a .com company, and this was a great time to be working in the .com space. And then, ironically, months into my professional career, we had the .com crash that was shortly afterwards in 2000. So I was probably the latter portion of 2000, maybe first part of 2000. And I found myself recently engaged to my wife, and I was thrilled and I was excited to be, the breadwinner and the provider for my family. And of course, then found myself jobless, months later. And my father-in-law owned a home building company here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I came back and started working for him, and that's what got me into the business. And I was eager and thrilled to have a job. And I'll mention this, that in Houston in 2001, this is just before I was married, some of the biggest companies were Compaq Computers, which is now gone, Enron Corporation, which is gone, and Continental Airlines, which is also gone. And by the time, these were really some, Fortune 100 companies that were here that were in Houston. And it's amazing because it would have sounded like a sure bet to become an IT, assistant at Enron at the time. But, fortunately, sometimes it's those unanswered prayers we get along the way, right? It's probably a good thing I didn't end up, working for Enron. So.
Absolutely. And seems like after working in the construction industry and heading to business school, you also spent a few years in Mexico developing real estate. What were some of the highs and lows of that part of the journey?
Yeah, and just for a little background context, I did a study abroad program in Argentina, and I'm fluent in Spanish, so I'm very comfortable speaking Spanish. And we took a class trip down to Ciudad Juarez, Mexico, which is right on the border. It's just south of El Paso. And at the time, this was in probably 2004, Juarez was a city that was growing by 60,000 people per year. And for a home builder, that sets off alarms, right? You're saying, wow, this is explosive population growth. They have to be undersupplied from a housing perspective. The challenge was that these people were making on average $2 an hour.
Wow.
in most cases, they were working for a Fortune 500 company who had set up a big manufacturing operation in Mexico. These are called the maquiladoras. So there were people who worked for, Johnson and Johnson or GE or whatever, but they couldn't afford, good, healthy housing. So we came up with a concept to convert used shipping containers into ultra affordable housing for employees of the maquiladoras. And we were offering the $8,000 house along the border in Mexico. And the idea was to sell these communities of affordable housing to the employers to allow them to vest ownership in those units to their employees to increase their retention at the plant. So we started this concept and we won the Notre Dame Business Plan competition. We were featured on the front page of CNN and on the Colbert Report and all sorts of other great things at the time. We got awards and recognition from UN Habitat, from the United Nations, and we thought we were on to something big. And the credit crisis of 2008 hit. Lehman Brothers collapsed. The economy crumbled very quickly. And they say that in the U.S., when the U.S. gets a cold, Mexico gets the flu. And developing nations really get hit much, much worse when we have an economic downturn here in the U.S. And Mexico was really, the economy of Mexico, well, I should say of this sector of Mexico was just crippled. I mean, it was really devastating. They laid off 90,000 people in 60 days in the fourth quarter of 2008. And the basically what I would say, institutional spending and investment and the need for what we offered went away almost overnight. It was a pretty dramatic switch. But we did work in Mexico. I love Mexico, and I really love the segment of ultra affordable housing, and would love to get back to tackle some issues of affordability. We think that's one of the challenges that remains in our market and in our world when it comes to real estate.
Yeah, a lot of listeners listening to this who are seeing the current affordability crisis in America might probably want to reach out to you to understand, how you're able to build such massive quantities of workforce housing in Mexico at scale. It's too sad 2008 ended that business. So then, in the middle of all this crisis, and after nearly a decade out of school, you launch your own shop. What was that like?
Yeah, so of course, we left the ashes of our failed startup behind in El Paso, Texas, and just to throw some personal context on top of it, at the time. We had just had our fourth and fifth kids who are twins. So I had basically newborn twins, which were kids number 4 and 5, and we had, no money, no jobs, no careers, and what I would say, if for anyone who remembers this time period, it seemed like nobody in the world was hiring in the fourth quarter of 2008. I mean, every company that I could think of was laying off, right? I mean, this was a huge contraction of the economy. So we came back to Albuquerque, where we still had our house here, and I came across somebody who had. I actually ended up selling homes for a period of time, just working as a sales associate in new construction, which I felt comfortable doing. I had been the division president before, so I took the pay cut, so to speak, but that's okay. Was selling homes in 2008 and came across an opportunity where there was a developer who owned some lots. At that point in time, almost every market in America had too many lots. They were talking about having 10 years of supply of finished lots in places like Phoenix or Dallas or New Mexico. Right, every builder had been growing and growing and growing, so they were out doubling their land position. And then when the market really took a drop, everybody thought that they needed twice as much land for the year that was coming up. And then when the market went to half, now everybody had 4 to 5 years worth of lot supply. Wow. So everybody was trying to, get rid of lots as quickly as they can. And we found a great opportunity to buy some lots at a great price where we thought we could sell and be successful. And the seller gave us favorable terms. We quit our jobs and started Abrazo Homes. And 2 days after we did this, the seller told us that they were going to be going into foreclosure. So we thought we were doomed all over again. but we asked who the bank was, and we ended up meeting with the lender directly. And we talked to the bank. The president of the bank told us, he's like, look, nobody wants to buy these lots. So if I foreclosed on the seller, I'm just going to spend $100,000 in legal and then still own these lots for a year or two. He said, tell you what, why don't I just give you a fresh loan? And it gets the regulators off of my back. It goes from being a non-performing loan to a performing loan, and I'll foreclose on you later. But he basically ended up giving us this almost 100% financing to start our company. It was this kind of miraculous tale that we could never get these terms ever again. But we were willing to take the chance when nobody else was to start a home building company in 2010. And although they thought we were crazy, it all worked out. And we paid back the loan in full, I think 22 months later. We sold through 68 houses in 22 months. And it was a great time for affordability, and interest rates were attractive, and we could build and sell houses for $150,000, $160,000, $180,000. And that's where the market was, and it worked out.
Holy cow, Brian, you just gave me goosebumps from having, your kid number 4 and 5 in the heart of one of the worst financial crises of our lifetime, if not the past 50 years, to entering real estate when everybody else is exiting it, and finding this golden opportunity to get 100% financing, and still finding a way to make profitability from that, and converting that into selling 68 homes over a few years. That's very, very impressive. Through this journey,
we still have the scars and the bruises to show for it, but we got through it.
I'm sure. Blood, sweat, and tears. Through this journey, what advice did you absorb from the mentors and parental figures in your life that helped you keep going?
Yeah, I think there's an element of just grit and resilience that's required, and I can say that for real estate. I can say that really for entrepreneurship as well. What I would say is, when I was in school, or, you work on a project, you work on a business plan, you work on whatever it might be, and you can invest 100 hours in your final presentation. You think that you've done exhaustive research to, have it all perfected. But when you actually take the plunge and you dive into, the real world, and now you're using real ammunition, so to speak, and dodging arrows and whatever it might be, it's a whole different world, right? And I'm a big believer that once you take risk, that's actually what unlocks the highest levels of human potential. And so I'm a big believer in risk taking, in terms of that's what gets you out of bed every morning and kicks your butt into gear and says, I really need to get after it today. And there's a quote that we've read in our sales meetings. I'll have to paraphrase it. I won't get it perfect, but it says, every morning in Africa, a gazelle wakes up and it knows that it must outrun the fastest lion or it will be eaten. And every morning in Africa, a lion wakes up and it knows that it must outrun the slowest gazelle or it will starve. And so the parable is, it doesn't matter whether you're a lion or a gazelle. When the sun comes up, you better get running.
You better get running. Yeah.
And I think that, people who are entering into real estate or construction or entrepreneurship, they're taking the plunge. They're putting themselves at risk. And when you put yourself at risk, you will learn a lot about yourself, and you'll determine a whole new level of grit and perseverance and scrappiness, right? I mean, you might find yourself picking up the paintbrush and painting a kitchen at midnight just because it's what has to be done in order for the project to succeed. And nobody writes that into their business plan, but you find those things out along the way.
How did your upbringing help you build this bone of grit and resilience and embracing risks?
Well, I'm one of 4 kids, and I have 2 older brothers and a younger sister. My parents were divorced when I was 7, so I think I ended up kind of just getting raised by the wolves, so to speak. We spent a lot of time. Well, and it was a different time back then as well, especially in New Mexico. But we would kind of get put out of the house and say, come back at dinner and go explore, ride your bikes, have fun, go climb a tree, go, we I don't know, maybe we just got lucky and the risks we took were not punished too severely back then. But it's one thing that I think is a little bit of a shame, right? Is that everybody today wants to have everything, perfect. and fully vetted and have every T crossed before they step out of their comfort zone. And I truly just think that, at some point perfection is unachievable. You can't predict everything. You just have to, when you get to a point where you have, the hunch, and you have to be adequately prepared, right? I mean, I wouldn't, if people have never done anything about real estate or never studied it, I wouldn't just take the dive. But I think you can arm yourself with enough information, and you build out. It's kind of that. Sometimes you have to pack your parachute after you jump off the cliff a little bit, right? And figure out everything else on the way down. But I'm a big believer that people, pursue their dreams, chase these opportunities, and take some chances.
And sometimes you might have to build a plane on the way down or pack your parachute on the way down, and that's just a part of entrepreneurship. I completely agree. Now, entrepreneurship? Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say, that's not to say that everything's gonna be a success, right? I mean, I'm glad we're able to talk today, and that it sounds like I'm gonna be able to tell you some stories of success and accomplishment. But I have a trail of failures in my rearview mirror, right? And I think that most successful entrepreneurs do, right? You don't hit a home run every time you step up to.
Completely agree. So, talking about success, what's been your best year professionally so far?
Oh gosh. I'll say this one. This is a good one. So, and I'll say that we're not going to sell the most homes we've ever sold, and it's not about that. But obviously, we're still selling houses. I would say 13 to 15 houses a month, which is great for us. We're on our business plan. We're still doing well. The point is that this year we're bringing on, and we've brought to market Riot Technology. And it's awesome to have in our own homes, and we're seeing the penetration in the market. We're seeing that the message and the idea that I had in my head 3 years ago or 4 years ago is now really coming to fruition, and the market's starting to validate that. They're saying, yeah, this is something that our industry needs. So that's very personally, validating to have, had an idea and put a lot of time and effort into developing this idea and seeing it, kind of grow wings a little bit. It's very exciting.
I love it. So for somebody who doesn't understand the new construction industry or even the role of technology in new construction industry, what pain points does Riot Technology solve for its target customers?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. What I would advocate, or what I will claim, I guess, is most smart home technology that exists is really, first of all, it's designed for the retrofit market primarily. And second of all, it's also set up in a way that we call it the one trick pony, right? So you might get a doorbell camera that's very, very good at that one thing, or a thermostat control, or a lighting control, or some of those systems. But all of those devices you can buy for a house that's 50 years old, and you can go and retrofit these devices. But a couple of different things happen. I mean, one, it becomes a fractured ecosystem where the average homeowner ends up with 3 or 4 different apps on their phone that don't really talk to each other. Second of all is, you have a mix of devices, protocols, technologies, and it becomes a do-it-yourself project, right? I mean, I don't want to say nobody, but very few people there's not a lot of providers out there saying, hey, just make my house a smart home, right? Where you can just have somebody come in and do this. And because of the nature of this kind of fragmented business and the number of players who are trying to come in and compete for this, now it's like, okay, now we have a smart, dog bowl water filler upper and a smart microwave and a smart this and smart that. But because so much technology is converging around this space all at once, builders, we're the integrators. We're the ones who make sure that the concrete integrates properly with the framing, with the electrical, with the plumbing, with the HVAC. And the builders are just kind of giving a lot of this technology a broad-based rejection. They're just saying, I'm not going to adopt this technology because there's too many choices, there's too many standards, there's too many protocols. My homeowners all want different things. I don't want to have to go learn 50 different solutions. And none of those products give me any benefit as the builder at post-closing. And so what we've done with Riot is we have come up with a prepared kit of devices and sensors that are designed to be built into the house. And once that's there, I mean, obviously you get an integrated solution as a homeowner with a lot of preventative maintenance features and everything else. But we're talking about systems in the wall and in the house. Riot Technology is not about lighting and blinds and speakers. It's about understanding, do I have any leaks in the house? Is my air conditioning working as designed, as it's intended? What's my power consumption? What's my water consumption? Is it time for me to change my air filter, right? And it's providing a diagnostic level of home performance back to the homeowner and to the home builder. So just as an example, Nick, if I were to build you a house today and hand you the keys, in 99.99% of the world, right, we say, here's your keys and good luck. Like I have no idea about what happens in your house from that day forward for the rest of time, unless you call me and say there's an issue. On the flip side, if you look at a Tesla, for example, if you were to buy a new Tesla, that Tesla has 250 different sensors and devices that are incorporated and designed into that car, specifically to give you benefit as the owner of the Tesla, but also for Tesla to have benefit as the OEM. So that if your car breaks down on the road, and you can call Tesla and say, hey, I have a problem, they can remote into the car, pull all those sensors and devices, pull all the information out of there, and have a good sense using the diagnostic data to tell you what's wrong with the house or what's wrong with the car, right? That's the analogy for the house. And that's exactly what we're creating is an onboard diagnostic system for the home. So we're talking to, we include a smart water meter and multiple shutoff devices, CT sensors, air quality monitors. We can use that for leak detection. We can tell if there's a leak because the water meter keeps spinning in the house. Even if it was in wall or underground, and even if the homeowner never detected it, we would know that there was a leak in the house. And that helps to protect us as a builder, but it also helps to protect the homeowner in a big way. We have a pressure differential switch, so we're measuring air pressure above and below the air filter to determine if there's a dirty air filter. And if the air filter is dirty, we get a notification, and so would the homeowner, to say it's time to change your filter. And we're tracking, we have a little magnet to track the filter changes. And so if you were to call and say, well, my air conditioning's not working, I can say, hold on, pull up, the diagnostics of the house and say, it looks like you haven't changed your filter in 11 months. So that might be an issue, right? And some of the simple kind of diagnostic issues that we have on the house, and we're not trying to chase, again, lighting and speaker control. It's about communicating with the mechanical layer of the home to understand if it's doing the right thing. And air quality is going to be a huge concern going forward, especially in new construction. And we have to be able to monitor some of these devices and provide assurances for both the occupants of the home and for the builders of the home to make sure that we can properly interface with all these. And so it's really that home operating system or that home interface to really talk to the diagnostic layer of the house. That's what we're working on.
Brian, this is incredible. I mean, it seems like you're building, like you said, the Teslafication of homes. It's almost like Tesla meets Apple for homes as well, because Apple and Google, as we know, I have also entered the home technology market through their own software layer and to a degree a hardware layer as well. But you have taken hardware to a whole next level. It's not just like you said, speakers and lighting. It's managing, your water usage, so you can instantly know if there's a leak. Making sure you're checking your air filters and replacing them, which I'm guilty of not replacing my air filters on time all the time. And I know that it adds, a lot of money to my electricity and heating and cooling costs, but it's just something that you procrastinate on, right? Even when we invest in homes, we send them this massive manual. It's like a pilot's guide of how to fly a plane when you buy a home, right? Like how to take care of your home and change the gutters in the winter and all that. If you can convert all that into technology, that would be insane. So, what would a homeowner or a builder get in a home that's pre-installed with Riot technologies that they wouldn't get from a competitive vendor?
Sure. Yeah, and that's a great question. And just, you threw some names out there of companies that I admire that are doing some fantastic things. But, if you look at the Apple HomeKit, for example, or an Amazon Alexa, right, that's something it's designed when they came up with these devices or these solutions, they're saying, okay, any home in America, you can plug this thing in and set it on your counter and talk to it, and it'll turn on your lights. It's great. Their market size might be, just in the US, we'll say it's 150 million homes, which is huge. That's great. So there, and from a new home perspective, we build maybe 1 million homes a year, just to give you a rough number of comparisons. So their market size is 150 times greater than ours in terms of the pursuit that they're going after. But when we design things specifically for installation in new construction, just to give you an example, we install when we're building a house, and I have the studs open. There are certain things that are very simple for us to do, but we bring in our main water line, just as an example, and we put in a T. When we install this T, we can separate your interior domestic supply from your external water, your exterior supply for all your landscaping lines, hose bibs, and all these other pieces. And we install separate shutoff valves to isolate these two zones.
Wow.
And just as an example, we have an internet-based weather feed, so it brings in the weather temperature tonight. And it would say if tonight in Albuquerque, New Mexico, it's going to be 20 degrees Fahrenheit, we're going to have freezing temperatures. And I can use that weather feed to automate and shut off the valve that serves hose bibs and landscaping lines that has any exposure to the outside temperature. And I can prevent all that stuff from freezing and from breaking. So I can have my frozen pipe prevention automated and taken care of, but still have my hot water serving my sinks and my showers, and still live in the house comfortably. And the cost of that is not, the cost of the plumbing T is $2 when we do it in a new construction environment. If you wanted to go back and retrofit this in your existing home, it would cost you tens of thousands of dollars to isolate and separate out your plumbing. So it's simple design changes that we can make. And when we're looking at this on the blueprints, it's very simple to lay out. And every plumber is like, oh yeah, no problem. That makes sense. But the cost of the devices is not, extraordinary in our opinion. But the point is that our market, because we're 150th of the size of, Apple, right, or whatever you want to call it, they're probably not going to pursue some of these very niche solutions that might, they're untested markets and highly focused in new construction. But in our opinion, it's been a missed opportunity of like, what if we designed what if we designed the technology into our homes? Then what could we do? And the answers are much bigger and broader. And I think that helps us to differentiate new construction from resale homes as well. Is that if we can really make new homes, spectacular and highly differentiated from a resale home. So that's something that we're excited to bring to the whole industry.
Yeah, I completely agree. And your statistics are also very, very accurate. There are about 144 million addresses in the country across 92 million homeowners, so roughly 150 million existing homes. And we are only building about 1.5 million new homes a year. So like you said, the most of the large players have attacked the larger market of existing homes. But you found this really critical problem in the new home building market, and you're essentially one of the first ones out of the gate to essentially convert the whole home into a smart home. And in the future, you could even have, and I'm just guessing here, an API that a Tesla or Apple could plug in. So as soon as you park your Tesla on the driveway, your home's ready for you to, or your Tesla is a mile away from your home, then your home's ready to make sure you're ready to enter the home with the right temperature and everything else as well. So this could be,
we have it. Yeah, the API exists today. And it's very exciting. We're working with other manufacturers and other controllers of other components that go into the home. So we're working with Carrier, for example, who's a big HVAC contractor, and we're getting information off of their sensors and off of their motherboard that goes into the house, and we can pull error codes off of the furnace, for example, or we can pull static air pressure, we can pull amp draw, right? So I'm able to monitor things at a mechanical level. And now I can get the heartbeat of the air conditioning system to understand if things are working appropriately. So the API is there. We're working right now. We have EV charging. We have smart and connected EV charging as well, which is going to be a massive change going forward, because the grid and homes are not ready for the amount of power that we're going to require 5 to 10 years from now. And we really need an algorithm. We need a traffic cop to be able to manage the energy flow through the house, or we have to massively upgrade the grid in the next 10 years. And I don't think that's going to happen. So, but yes, we're working on EV charging. There's energy arbitrage that we can do right now, with these time of use billing schedules where you can say, charge my electric car starting at midnight when the rate of electricity is cheaper than 5 p.m. when I get home, right? And we can use all of our smart controls to automate and control these appliances and these components.
Brian, that's incredible. It sounds too incredible. So, are there any risks of working with Riot Technologies?
Yes, absolutely. Not everybody wants to see the data. We've had this conversation with several builders. I mean, I think there are a lot of builders who we're being transparent with the data, right? And what that means is if I were to build you a house, Nick, and you move in and, let's say there was a leak underneath the foundation, you would see that information as the homeowner, and I would see it at the same time, right? So we believe in this kind of data equality in the sense that we would both want to know about it. That's our fundamental belief. But there are some people who are like, wait, I don't want my homeowners to know that. Like, I don't, I want to know the information, but I don't want them to know the information because that could be used against me, right? And what happens if Nick has a leak in his house and he calls me and I don't respond fast enough, or I don't, does that put me in a position of elevated liability? Now do I have certain other additional risk? So, or if there was an issue with air quality or an issue, or, what if the house is not very energy efficient and it's using way more power than we thought it was going to? I mean, when the data doesn't lie. And the point is, not all the truths that you will learn from the data are good or favorable. So, our belief though is that data becomes the feedback loop to continual improvement, right? And it's at some point we need to know what are we doing well and what are we not doing well, and how can we iterate and how can we continue to improve. And we see that. I mean, this is one of the fundamental pillars of Six Sigma manufacturing that Toyota and all these other companies use, is you have to establish these feedback loops to continue to improve and get better in your business, to be able to deliver higher quality products and services. And that there is no feedback loop for real estate other than, does another buyer show up tomorrow, right? And buy a house from you. But we really want to start measuring the performance, and you can't manage what you don't measure. So, but yeah, there's probably a lot of people who wouldn't want to know all the data wouldn't want to know everything about.
So they can have plausible deniability. It seems like this is a feature you might have to add in, where builders can still have plausible deniability, but still upgrade the home to a smart tech system.
Well, and our response to that, I guess, is, okay, if there was a leak in Nick's house, and I don't want Nick to know about it, or whatever. I mean, I guess the point of the alert of saying like there's a leak does not change the underlying fact that there is in fact a leak, right? If there is a problem, you'd rather know about it sooner than later. That's really how we evaluate that. But yeah, some people say, well, that it seems like that kind of puts the smoking gun in my hand. And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, if you built the house and it has a leak, then you have some culpability. So yes, there's and I will say this too. We're just in terms of other risks. We still see this as, we are at the very, we're this is the tip of the iceberg in terms of the technology, the improvements, the iterations that can come to this space. So we are continuing to develop. We plan on having over-the-air software updates for the home and doing all sorts of other things to continue to make the home better. But yes, we don't have all the answers today. We're not perfect. We're still very much a startup company, and we won't profess to be a absolutely perfected solution with all the answers. Those things are going to continue to change.
Absolutely. How will you enable future upgrades to hardware and technology as it improves in the future?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we're putting in what we believe to be a pretty robust set of hardware from a processing perspective. That's one of the most important things. By the way, our platform is hosted by AWS. It's Amazon Web Services. So we're using all basically kind of the latest standards and platforms for IoT, security and protocols and standards. It's and the data, of course, goes up to the cloud. The controller and all the switches and all the devices in the house would still continue to function in an internet deprived environment. So everything still works locally. But yes, we are still, talking about, how do we, I'll tell you an example of something we have not figured out yet. But, when we talk about machine learning and AI, the learning models require big data sets in order to, and over time, if we said, okay, Nick has lived in his house for a year, then we can really start to draw some good conclusions to say Nick usually gets home at 5:30 p.m. and he likes to turn on the TV and he likes his air conditioning to be set at 72 degrees, et cetera, right? To where we can start to automate and optimize around these routines and schedules and scenes in the house. And those things can be hard programmed today. I mean, you can set a program to say that, set my air to 72 degrees at 5:30. But the point is that we could start to adapt and learn and send through some of these recommendations for you to say, Nick, it looks like you leave to go play golf on Saturday mornings. Do you mind if we reduce your temperature or you change your temperature by 2 degrees? And if we did so, it might save you $5 a month. Is that something you're interested in? Yes or no? But before you can make any of those recommendations or those automations, you have to start with the data set. And right now, there's not anything like what we're proposing in terms of being to accumulate this amount of high resolution data with regards to how do you live in.
I love it. Google bought Nest for about $3 billion ish. I wouldn't be surprised if one of the large tech companies eventually buys you out. So if you're an investor listening to this, try to get into Brian's cap table as quickly as possible. at least that's what I'm going to try to do after we finish this record.
You're right. Nest was $3 billion. Ring was another $1.1 billion purchased by Amazon, and there have been big exits in this IoT space. And by the way, I'll celebrate those companies, both of them. But those were basically one trick ponies, right? I mean, Nest focused on the thermostat, Ring focused on the doorbell. After Nest was bought, they started doing other pieces. But what we're doing is, it is ambitious. We're talking about air, water, air quality, furnace filters, mechanical. I mean, it's a broader space with a narrower market view. We're not going after 150 million homes. We're going after the 1 million new homes that are built up.
Completely agreed. And seems like I'd love to learn more about how you operate multiple companies, right? So it seems like culture is a key part of your strategy. And read something on your website called there's a way of working, the Abrazo familiar way at your development company. And so how would you describe the culture of working in a team at your company?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think, and I'll tell you, we drew some inspiration. I took a tour. I went to Las Vegas once and took a tour of Zappos, which was the shoe online shoe vendor. And it was a really inspiring tour and great company to learn more about. But their founder, Tony Hsieh, he had worked in spaces before where he said, I was making a lot of money, but I wasn't happy when I showed up to work. And it was, I think many of us at some point in our careers have, regardless of the paycheck, come into a place where you weren't energized, you weren't enthused, you weren't inspired to be working on what it was. You were just saying, I'm just here for the paycheck. And as soon as the clock hits 5 o'clock, and we really, we wanted to, when we started Abrazo, we really were very intentional about forming some of those elements of the pillars of our culture to say we really want to enjoy the people we work with. We want to have a high performance organization. We want to have great attitudes and high enthusiasm. And it really matters dramatically in terms of when we care about our employees and we really care about their personal needs and their desires, our employees tend to care about our customers. And that's, in our situation, when Abrazo, speaking as for Abrazo Homes for a moment, when people are buying a $450,000 house from us, regardless of the purchase price, it's really one of the largest financial commitments that they're ever going to make in their life. It's maybe the biggest financial purchase. So they're really looking for someone they can trust and someone who has their interest in mind along the way. And if we truly just turn this into just a transaction and we depersonalize this, the buyers don't buy from it. They don't. If the buyers feel like we're hearing your story, we care about your needs and your interests, and we'll try to get you to the right, the right product, the right house, the right lot, the right fit. That's great. And we tell our salespeople sometimes, like, we're not the right fit for everybody. And if you were to come in and say, hey, I'm looking for $1 million house on the golf course, we would just say, I'm sorry, we don't have that, and we might not be the right builder for you. Let me point you in the direction of somebody who might. And sometimes customers are taken aback when we just say, yeah, I'm sorry, we can't help you, but we think it's the right thing to do, right? Is we don't try to shoehorn anybody into a product or a solution that doesn't fit. We try to care about our employees, our team, our vendors, our subcontractors. When we build a house, we have about 60 different subcontractors who play a role in getting that house built, and every one of them needs to feel like we care about them as well. And we just feel that when you have that level of care and concern, that it shows up in the product, it shows up in the service, it shows up in the communication and the follow-up that you do. And we do, just to kind of switch over to Riot Technology, this is very innovative. It's pioneering, and in a space where, if you look at new homes, a lot of new homes are being built the same way today that they really have been built for 20 or 30 years, and some minor improvements along the way, I hope. But we believe that people want to work for an ambitious culture, right? That people want to show up to work where the company is doing something new and innovative, and they're trying to make the industry or make the community better along the way. And so, Riot is, of course, we hope it's a marketable business venture, and at the same time, it's kind of integral part of our culture. It's like we have this, one of our beliefs is this belief of continual improvement, which means we're never perfected and we're always getting better. And, we have to continue to iterate and push things forward along the way.
Yeah, I love it. Tony Hsieh, founder of Zappos, built one of the most, well-known cultures in Silicon Valley, God rest his soul. And, your core philosophy on happy employees lead to happy customers resonated very strongly. And seems like you have this Japanese Kaizen philosophy as well. I'm not sure if I'm saying the name right, of continuous improvement, right? So, what's the story behind naming your development company Abrazo and your prop tech company Riot?
Sure. Yeah. Well, we live in New Mexico, and New Mexico is to me, it's one of the most culturally rich states in the United States. And when I say that, I mean we have a huge Hispanic population. We have 19 Native American reservations in the state of New Mexico. We have these so many cultures converging. We have the history of the Manhattan Project and Los Alamos National Laboratories, and we have Air Force bases. There's a lot going on here, but this is a place where we really continue to value and recognize some of our local culture. And this is a place where our Spanish culture and our Spanish roots are deep in New Mexico, and we wanted to have a name that reflected a little bit of that local culture. We just figured if we called ourselves Liberty Homes or Lincoln Homes or whatever you want to call it, that's a pretty generic, name that could exist in, 50 states in America. And we wanted something that was a little more unique and differentiated that resonated with, with our local people. I speak Spanish, and I love the word abrazo is the Spanish word for hug or embrace.
Wow.
So that's great. It gave us a more unique URL, became more searchable, and it put us at the top of all lists alphabetically. That's the story behind Abrazo. And Riot is an acronym. It's RIOT, which is the Residential Internet of Things, right? So this IoT. So our IoT space is really interesting, and that's a whole sector of the new kind of Web 3.0, the new digital economy that's growing. This IoT is a major trend that we're going to see for the next 50 years. I don't know, but we wanted to play off of IoT, and so we went with residential IoT. That's our acronym.
And it seems like, Brian, your team is one of the top 5 developers in the state of New Mexico, and probably top 3, top 4 in the Albuquerque metropolitan area.
Correct.
What do you know or think about the Albuquerque and the broader New Mexico housing market that most people will be surprised to learn about?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question. Albuquerque is it's been a pretty historically stable real estate market. We have not typically had what I'll call the highest highs or the lowest lows. And we could say in many regards there's a large amount of government spending that happens in Albuquerque and in the state of New Mexico. But just in Albuquerque, we have Kirtland Air Force Base, Sandia National Laboratories. Sandia National Laboratories is a multi-billion-dollar annual national laboratory that functions, and it's on base. We have the Air Force Base, we have the Air Force Research Laboratory, and we have some pretty big defense contractors and suppliers here as well. And of course, in Albuquerque, some of the state government offices too. We have the University of New Mexico, which has 50,000 students. It's a large university. So we haven't had as much private sector employment historically as a place like Phoenix or Denver per se. But we haven't also had those .com crashes or the Silicon Valley, really big volatility. It's a more stable economy that continues to, just kind of grow and slowly grow. And we have had some good private sector gains. This is now Netflix North American production headquarters is here out at Mesa del Sol. Facebook has just built, or I should say Meta has built a new multi-million square foot data center in Los Lunas. And we're definitely still seeing growth in aerospace and tech and some of these other spaces as well. So, but it's beautiful. This is a charming place with great weather, 300 days of sunshine. And we have, most people don't know, we're at 5,000 feet elevation. We're the same elevation as Denver. And yes, it's a place where we still have our kind of cultural heritage, and it's a place where we value our local restaurants and our local friends and family, and hopefully our local home builders as well. So
absolutely. Yeah. And what's your biggest bottleneck to development going forward? Are you able to acquire the land easily and build as many units as are needed in the market right now?
Not easily, no. I will say that's one of our constraints. So the city of Albuquerque, we actually have almost a box that's enclosed. We have a big mountain and national forest on one side of town. On the north and south sides of town, we have Air Force Base and 2 different Native American reservations that we've built almost up to the boundary of 3 sides of the city. On the west side, we have this 120 foot tall basalt rock escarpment that makes this development easily. It makes development difficult. There are some extinct volcanoes out there that have big lava flows. So if you want to get infrastructure in the ground, you're breaking through a lot of rock to get water pipes and some of these pieces in here. So the growth of the city is somewhat constrained. Land prices have gone up pretty significantly over the last 5 years, but I know that has happened almost everywhere. And the development, the entitlement process is not an easy one in New Mexico. From the time we identify raw land to the time we're bringing on developed lots, it's probably about a 3-year period now. And that used to be 16 to 18 months. So all the time frames of entitlement and development work are really kind of stretched out a little bit. And it requires more capital, more patience, more time to bring these projects online. But that, for better or for worse, has constrained our supply. So what that means is when we do bring a project online, we've had relatively, solid and stable absorption of those projects when we do get them, and good price appreciation and some of those things where it might be perceived as a little bit less risky because it would be almost impossible to overbuild your lot supply in Albuquerque. And I think you could overbuild your lot supply in a place like Dallas or
Austin or Phoenix
or some of these other markets, right?
Absolutely love hearing about the Albuquerque market as a real estate investor and a real estate analyst, because For long-term investments, you want a market that's supply constrained, not just geographically, but also from other zoning and other restrictions as well. And you want builders to have a slightly hard time building so that they don't flood the market like Austin is flooded right now, or Boise is flooded right now, or parts of Florida or Phoenix is flooded right now. But you also want there to be growing supply, so a new business would be able to move in there and hire their workforce and still keep growing.
Right.
From everything you're seeing, the market seems great. I take a look at it in more detail later. Um, Coming back to your work, what percentage of new homes built by Abruzzo in the New Mexico area use technology built by Riot?
Right. So we released Riot Technology. We debuted it to the world in March of this year, and it's currently going into 3 of our new communities, and it will go into all of them as a standard feature. We had a couple of communities that we were kind of in this closeout period where we only had a handful of lots remaining, and we didn't want to change the features list and for just for the last kind of stragglers of those lots for the final houses. So it's going into 3 communities today, and it will be in 100% of our homes that we start in 2025 going forward.
Love it. I love it. Seems like you love drinking your own wine, eating your own. So if a builder is listening to this, whether they are a chief, technology officer at a large builder, or the principal CEO of a, growing builder, how should they reach out to you and your team?
Sure, absolutely. What I would advocate is we have some great information on our website, which is www.riot-technology.com. And we have some videos and some information, of course, about the product and offering. But we have a little contact us button down at the bottom corner of that page, and that sends an email to the guy sitting next door to me. So the contact page on our webpage is a great way to reach out. And it's also a great way to have an overview about the system, about some of the capabilities and everything else, and what it can do. And what I would say is, on average, our kind of base package that goes into a house costs about $3,500 for the base system, for the sensors and valves and components. And then there's a $10 per month subscription for the monitoring and data collection of all the different devices.
That seems quite reasonable for almost a $450,000 home. Brian, I'd love to ask you some rapid fire questions.
Of course.
So let's say a family office called you, and they have had a liquidity event, and this Sunday have a lot of liquidity. Out of that liquidity, they want to invest $100 million in just real estate. How will you advise them?
Sure. I would do it in 2 pieces. I would invest $10 million into Riot Technology, and the other $90 million I would invest in pre-entitlement land for master plan communities. And I think there's a major opportunity there. For the record, the publicly traded home builders will almost never put money at risk for pre-entitlement projects. So, but these master plan communities, especially in my mind, this vision of the next level of master plan community can be extraordinary, right? So when we talk about having smart cities and smart communities and bringing in some of this technology and bringing in, these eco features, right, in terms of subdivision-wide geothermal or solar farms or microgrids, and creating these really, low energy, amazing renewable communities, they require a huge capital lift to do this. You have to have economies of scale to build a thousand unit master plan that has these incredible features and incredible amenities. That requires, $50, $60, $70 million at times in order to get these projects, to get the boulder pushed off the mountain. And the publicly traded builders typically won't do it. And, because they don't like entitlement risk. And to the degree that we could take entitlement risk off their shoulder, you can actually do the entitlement risk for $1 million. You don't have to put $90 million out there, but you have to be able to close on the site once the entitlement work is done, and then develop it and bring it online. So you have to be well capitalized to see the project all the way through. But I think there's opportunities for massive returns on bringing some of these big ambitious projects to market. Because that's what customers want. Customers want parks, walking trails, swimming pools, low energy use, access to open spaces, and that's really hard to do at a small scale. You can't do a 20 or 30 or 40 unit development with all the great features that the consumer, that the modern day consumer wants.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's the amount of money at risk might be $1 million of the 100 million, but you have to have the dry powder in order to close on the deal once.
Wow. Talking about investments, how about your own real estate portfolio? How is it like?
Sure. So obviously the biggest component of that is Abrazo Homes, right? We have on any given day about 100 houses under construction, and it's great. So we love that. We're working on we do some fee building for other people. We're building for a nonprofit organization in Santa Fe, which is HomeWise. And we're building another build for rent project for another group here in town. We're doing a 90 unit project for a build to rent group. We have our own 36 unit project. Myself and my business partner have a 36 unit build to rent project that we're breaking ground on here soon. And I own, I don't know, 4 or 5 houses individually, plus we own another handful. We own some rental properties as well. And then we do own vacant land for development, right? We have a 99 acre parcel in an A submarket in Albuquerque that's phenomenal. It's going to be a great project for us, but we've had to do some work with regards to drainage improvements to really mitigate a floodplain issue, and we're relocating the floodplain and putting in these things, and that's going to make the project 10 times more valuable. But it's
Wow.
But all of our real estate investments require some level of activity, right? We're not we're pretty active investors, not so much passive, meaning the amount of mailbox money we get is small relative to the amount of exposure we have in real estate assets. But we believe that when you continue to work these things, that's where the bigger gains happen.
Yeah, seems like you're heavily invested in real estate and you put your money where your mouth. What's the best financial advice you've received?
Ooh, if I could go back in time and buy more real estate, I would have.
The best time to buy real estate was 10 years ago. The second best time
that's
is
right. Every time. Well, and what I'll say is, and I know I heard this described. I think it was E.F. Hutton. It said, don't lose, right? And what he was trying to say is, if you put $100,000 into stock, right, into securities, that does in fact have the potential to go to zero. And hopefully it's unlikely if you've done, balanced and diversified portfolio, et cetera. But if you really go to zero, you lose a decade of your life, right? In terms of, trying to rebuild and restart and regrow this portfolio. And what I would say is that, real estate is not always sexy. It's not always fast. It's not always, and it might not always be the return, the targeted return that you were seeking. It rarely goes to, right, to, and from that perspective, I love the security that real estate provides. At the same time, it definitely has its own challenges of illiquidity and, potentially debt service, and depending on how you structure the deal. I mean, it's not perfect, but I guess the other piece of investment advice is invest in what you know. Don't invest in what you don't know. So if I still don't really understand crypto. I see it, I watch its chart, I see what it's doing, and I'm excited for the people who've made a lot of money in it, but I won't invest in it because I don't pretend to know. Fundamentally is driving, the value creation in crypto. So I'll stick with real estate.
Yeah, completely agree. And seems like you are champion in Peloton. You are a father of 5 kids. You built a career building 5,000 homes, and now are building the next nest or the next ring that's probably going to be acquired for a couple of $1 billion. If your loved ones agree to be mentored by you, Brian, what's the number one skill you would teach?
Yeah, use your hands. Get dirty. I think that we have had. I think it's very easy for us to look at education today from this idea of these theoretical models, and to try to, people want to learn everything off of YouTube or off of textbooks or lectures or TED Talks, whatever you want to say. But you have to do. You can't just truly master these things by watching videos or by learning, by trying to absorb the content. You have to actually go do these. And when we're talking about Riot Technology with the builders today, I mean, the reason why it's resonating and the reason why builders are excited to work with us and the reason why it's moving forward is because we've built houses, right? We fundamentally understand what's going on inside the walls and inside the plumbing lines and inside the drains and inside the air conditioning. And if you don't have this fundamental base layer of knowledge about the physical world and how these things are all interacting and combining, you can't expect to build a beautiful technology layer on top of it. And if you don't know, the underlying mechanics. So I'm a big fan of old cars and classic cars and being a handyman and fixing things, because I really think once you start taking things apart and getting dirty and you get oil on your face or whatever, you really start to say, oh, now I now I learned something that I didn't know I was going to learn today. But I think that we have to continue to get our hands dirty and dive in and remain curious.
Use your hands and get dirty. That was Brian McCarthy, who runs multiple companies on construction and the IoT in real estate. He's a roadrunner who's always been focused on a high velocity with a high degree of grit, taking risks but continuously improving. If you want your next home to be as enabled as your Tesla, reach out to them on riot-technology.com. We'll add a link in the description. This is Nick Shah. If you ever want to talk about real estate, shoot me a note on CEO@home.llc. Thanks, everyone.